Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Zero Hour. We have a great show lined up for you. And before we get there, I just want to bring your attention to something that I'm almost certain you didn't hear this week. And I'll do this by way of asking two questions. One is it possible that the nation's bankers deliberately colluded to mislead the American people about mortgages and cause them to lose their homes? Two, how does a company with only 50 employees wind up having 20,000 quote unquote officers? Those two questions are very tied. But the story you probably didn't hear this week, I'm going to guess, is that the controller of the currency, the head of the OCC, one of the officials responsible for regulating Wall Street, wrote an editorial this week in which he said, and I quote, "I doubt that any large bank chief executive officer called together his senior executives and said, quote, foreclosure paperwork is too time consuming. Let's start robo signing the documents." This is what Thomas Curry, head of the OCC, wrote. We have evidence that he is almost precisely wrong in that. Why do we have evidence? Because we went onto the website of a company called MERS Incorporated a couple of years ago, and we downloaded it. Hundreds of pages of internal documents, including PowerPoint presentations, videos, actual videos, training manuals, and all sorts of things. Correspondence with the clients, perfectly legal to do because they hadn't passworded it or indicated that it was proprietary. We wrote about it at the time, but it says that. But basically, this is exactly what bank executives did, Mr. Curry, and I really respect you, Thomas Curry. He has a very difficult job, but I think he needs to know some of these things. First of all, I think he needs to know that MERS Incorporated, the name of the corporation, was owned by some of the biggest banks in America who have paid billions in fraud fines, including Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and so on. And that it was marketed to the banks as a way to get around paying local taxes. They said a savings of $30 per loan, at least. It was marketed as a way to give your mortgage to another bank without altering the title documents of the local court document. If you've ever had the unhappy experience, as I have, of suddenly being told your mortgage is owned by a new bank and it's late because the new bank has different deadlines, then that's why. Because they don't have to notify you, they don't have to notify the local courts. They create an artificial company, and it's very clearly spelled out in the documents, an artificial company that as a fiction holds legal title to the mortgage, but really you can buy it, sell it, bundle it, lie about it to investors and sell it off, whatever you want to do. It replaces and bypasses and is legal title, local court procedures, local registration fees and taxes. It's subject of a lot of lawsuits right now, but it pretty clearly says a number of things, including these bank executives joined this joint venture because they did want to make foreclosure, among other things, cheap, easy, and convenient, which is exactly what Thomas Curry thinks that they would never do. Here's another way that banks, and I could imagine the CEOs had to know about it, that the banks did exactly this. They put together robo signing outfits at JP Morgan Chase, for example, which is led by Jamie Morgan, the CEO. I mean, Jamie Dimon, the CEO. They called them the Burger King kids. They hired young college-age people, gave them Cokes and burgers and fries, sat them in a room, and said, attest on all these documents that you've done all the proper investigation, and this homeowner needs to be foreclosed on. The Burger King kids, every bank had its equivalent of the Burger King kids throwing people out of their homes. So our encouragement to Mr. Curry would be to look into this more deeply. Now, lastly, we'll close by saying the only way that the banks or their designees could represent the bank in court while still maintaining the fiction that MERS was the real holder of the title was by appointing the employees of all these different loan servicers and banks as officers of MERS Incorporated, which is why it wound up having 50 employees and more than 20,000 officers. This was a way of getting around local law, a way of getting around local taxes, and a way of getting around fairness in business. Mr. Curry of the OCC, we encourage you to take a look. And now we'll have a talk with Dean Baker and on with the rest of our program. I'm Richard, RJ Eskow, and this is the Zero Hour.